Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I trust you had a good lunch and we're ready to resume our testimony, and the state can call its next witness.
Thank you. We call Jeffrey Hammond to the stand.
Jeffrey, you'd come forward up to the witness stand, and Madam Clerk will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Jeffrey Hammond, H-E-M-M-E-N.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, if you could step up near the microphone or sit up near the microphone, and then whenever you're ready, count.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Hammond. I'm going to ask you a few things. Have you lived in this area long?
Yes,
How long?
since 1980.
Okay. And do you live in the Green Bay area?
Yes,
In May of 2016, what was your residence?
on Western Avenue,
Okay. What specific residence was it?
1243 Western,
Was that a house or an apartment?
a house.
And at some point in time, did you meet a George Stephen Burch?
Yes,
Is that person in the courtroom?
yes.
Could you tell me what he's wearing and where he's seated, please?
He's wearing a blue shirt.
I'd ask the record to reflect identification of the defendant.
The record will reflect that the witness has identified the defendant in open court. You may continue.
Do you remember what month it was in 2016 you met him?
Not specifically, but I knew it was early summer, late spring.
Was he living with you at that point in time?
No,
Where was he living?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you sometimes see him out and about?
Yes,
Any certain bars or restaurants?
yes.
Which one?
Richard Craniums.
Did you see him there regularly?
Occasionally,
Okay. How often would you go there during the week, just roughly?
once or twice.
Did you go there in May of 2016?
Yes,
Did you go there in June of 2016?
yes,
Was the defendant often there when you were there?
yes,
Did you get to know him?
yes.
How would you describe your relationship?
Casual friends, at first.
All right. Did you have any idea what area he lived in?
They told me he was from Virginia,
Okay.
but he lived close to the bar.
Okay. Did there come a time that he came to live at your home?
Yes.
How did that happen?
He came to me and explained that he had some issues. His mother died, and he tried making it home, and he ran out of money. And being a kind person, I said, well, I guess you can have some hops on my couch in the basement for a short period of time, which was less than a month.
Okay. Was he still living with you in June of 2016?
Specifically, I can't tell you if it was, I believe so.
And were you allowing him to have a couch in your basement?
Yeah,
Okay. Do you know if he was employed?
yes.
Where was he working?
He was working with Bay Area Plastering.
Were you familiar with that?
Yes,
Well, how is that?
I worked there.
How did he get to and from work, if you know?
I picked him up.
You gave him a ride in both directions?
Yes,
Did you work the same shift?
yes,
So in June of 2016, did you every now and then still see him at Richard Cranium's?
occasionally, yes.
Did you ever notice, was he ever attempting to pick up other women?
I couldn't speak to what his motives were, but I know he talked to women.
Did you know if he had a girlfriend during this time period?
I believe so.
What was her name?
Jordan?
Did he continue to stay with you in the summer of 2016?
No. I asked him to leave, just personal reasons, nothing to do with him.
Okay. Did he do so?
Yes,
Do you know where he went?
he went to live with Matt Wassenberg.
Matt Wassenberger?
Yes,
Was that someone else you knew?
yes,
How would you indicate your relationship with him?
just casual friends.
Did you sometimes see him at Richard Cranium's also?
That's where I met him.
Now, once he moved out, did you still give him rides to work?
Yes,
And in September of 2016, you're aware he was arrested, is that correct?
yes.
Prior to that time period, from the time you met him till the date of his arrest, before his arrest, did he ever bring up any facts or circumstances involving this homicide?
Not that I recall, no.
Well, would you have recalled if he told you about a homicide?
Yeah,
Cross-examination.
I have no questions, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. You are excused. State can call its next witness.
Matthew Wassenberg, please.
Mr. Wassenberg, if you'll come forward, and Jody will swear you in by the witness stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Matthew Wassenberg, Wassenberg.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Matthew, you may be seated. Attorney Kerrigan-Mares, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, sir. How old are you, sir?
I'm 34, going to be 35 in April.
Have you always lived in the Green Bay area?
Not always. Went
Where-
to school in Winona, and then I lived out in Philadelphia for a couple of years.
Okay, when did you return to this area?
Oh, I can't really say 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago.
Okay. Are you employed now?
Yes,
What do you do?
I work in the shipping and receiving department in Legacy Flexo.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Shipping and receiving department in Legacy Flexo.
Okay.
In charge of.
Matthew, can you sit a little closer to the microphone and speak clearly so that the
Okay.
jury can hear you, all right?
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to think back to May of 2016. Were there any certain bars or restaurants that you like to go to?
Richard Cranium's, Lucky Sevens, they have a good burger. Belt,
And I'm sorry, what was
the Avenue on Belt,
Okay.
or Long Branch.
And did you get to know a George Burch at any of those locations?
I knew him as Steve or Big Country, but yes,
Okay. So Steve or Big Country, Mr. Burch, was his last name?
yes,
And is that person in the courtroom?
yes.
Could you tell me what he's wearing and where he's seated?
Defendant's right there, and he's wearing a blue plaid.
I'd ask the record to reflect he's identified the defendant.
Wouldn't, or the record will so reflect. Go ahead.
Thank you. Did you also know a Jeff Hammond?
Yes,
Where did you know him from?
the bar, too.
The
He
Richard.
frequents at Richard Cranium's, too, so
Okay.
that's how I originally first met him.
And did you get to know the defendant fairly well? How would you describe him as a
As Jeff?
relationship?
Jeff?
I'm sorry, Mr. Burch, the
Oh.
defendant?
He seemed okay,
Okay.
very polite, talking to people and everything.
Did you become friends with him, or would you say acquaintances?
Acquaintance, everything.
Pardon me?
Acquaintance, getting to know him better and everything.
Okay. How often do you think you're at Richard Cranium's in a week, and say May of 2016?
Oh, in that 1 week, I don't know, a couple times, 2 or 3.
And let's say a month's average, what would you say?
I'd go there twice a week.
Okay. Was the defendant usually there?
What was that?
Was the defendant, Mr. Birch, usually there?
Not every single time, no.
He was.
Not every single time, no. But
Okay.
would he go there? Yes. Or he would text me saying, asking me what I'm doing. I would tell him I was there, and he would come meet me down there.
Okay. So you'd interact with him when you get there, I take it?
Yes,
Did you ever see him interact with other females?
yes,
Did he ever seem to be trying to pick up women?
yes.
Do you know if he was in a relationship at this point in time?
Yes, I do.
And with whom?
Jordan, her last name, I don't know, but her name is Jordan.
Did there come a time you ever noticed what kind of shoes he was wearing?
He always wore his Jordans,
What kind of Jordans?
Air Jordans.
And did there come a time when you noticed he was changing those shoes?
He came home with Jordan one time shopping with a brand new box of Jordans, yes.
Okay. Now, you say he came home. Where did he come to?
He came to my house when
Where did you live at this point in time?
512 15th Avenue.
And that's in Green Bay?
Green Bay, yes.
Now, who lived there at that point in time?
Me. And
You lived
then,
there
and then he was staying on the couch.
And when did you let him stay on your couch?
I don't know the exact date, but I'm going to say 2 months prior to him getting picked up.
So if he got arrested in September of 2016, approximately how long was he living with you before that?
I'm going to say about 2 months.
Now, you indicated he came home with new Jordans, is that what you said?
He had a brand new box, and then there was a brand new pair of Jordans in there.
And they were Air Jordans?
Yes,
And that's what he had been wearing?
yes.
Did you comment to him about the pair that he had had?
I asked him why he would if him and Jordan were looking to get a place together, because I wasn't going to keep him there the whole, it was a one-bedroom apartment. It was just me and my dog, so
Why he would what?
why he would buy a pair of brand new pair of Jordans when I thought the other ones looked fine.
Did you agree to meet later in September 7th of 2016 with the Brown County Sheriff's Department?
Yes. Actually, it was the same day that he got picked up.
Okay. Was there a time when you came home and you found that there'd been a disturbance at your home?
Yes.
And was that the Sheriff's Department at your home prior to you being there?
When I went to go open the door, there was a Brown County Sheriff car that fell down. And at the time, I'm like, well, I don't live in the nicest neighborhood anyway, so I thought maybe I saw something. And when I opened my door, everything looked like everything was gone through.
Okay. And there looked like there'd been a search,
Yep.
is that correct?
Yes.
If I may approach, I'm going to show you Exhibit 99. Do you recognize the scene in that photograph?
Yep. Those are where we put our shoes. Right when we
I'm
walk in
asking
the
you to
door.
speak up a little bit, sir.
Do you want me to show it too?
Certainly.
Oh. It's where when you walk in the door's right there, and we put our shoes to the right of the door.
So this is a scene from your home, is that
Yes,
correct?
correct.
And these are the shoes that were present in September of 2016?
Yes.
Could you show me which are the defendant's shoes? So you're pointing
As
to,
the Air Jordan, the gray Air Jordans.
okay, they're like a gray and navy blue, is that correct?
I just see gray, or gray and black, but yeah, gray and navy blue.
Okay, and there's a figure possibly flying through the air with a
Yep.
basketball, is that correct?
Air Jordan, yes.
Okay. And then there's some blue and white shoes also present, is that
Yes,
correct?
the Nike Shocks.
And to whom do those belong?
Those are mine.
Okay, so these are your shoes, the white and lighter blue?
Yep.
Thank you. And then, looking to Exhibit 100, you recognize what's in that photo?
That's the bottom of my shoes.
Okay, so that's, again, the bottom side of your
Nike
Shocks. Those are
Nike
not Air
Shocks.
Jordans, is
No,
that correct?
they are not.
Thank you. So, sir, with respect to the exhibit with the gray shoes, those are the newer ones that he purchased, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you made reference to him getting rid of a different pair, those are not in the picture. That was a pair that he disposed of, is that correct?
I didn't see them thrown away, but they were no longer in the house, though.
Okay. Nothing further, thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So you recall that you just looked at those photographs of the shoes,
Yes.
and that's how the shoes existed at that time after your residence was searched?
They were gone after I came home, but before I went to go to work, yes.
Okay, so after Mr. Burch was arrested and your residence was searched, they were no longer there?
They were no longer there, and I still don't have them, so.
Okay, but prior to that, that image is an accurate portrayal of how the shoes were kind of lined up behind your door?
Correct.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
Go right ahead. Attorney Stebbins, can I see them as well? That's all right.
Mr. Wassenberg, I'm going to hand you what was just marked exhibits number 127 through exhibit number 130. Could I just have you go through those?
Okay.
You don't have to describe them, just kind of go through them on your own for now.
Okay.
Okay, could you just give us an idea of what those are images of?
The shoes by the front hall, or when you walk into the door,
Okay,
and then the bottom of the soles.
so the shoes when you walk in and then the bottoms of those shoes.
Correct.
Judge, I'd ask for those exhibits to be admitted into evidence, and I'd ask permission to publish.
Do you want to have the witness specify what he's looking at on what exhibit?
Sure, we'll start at exhibit number 127, if you could just tell us what that's a photo of generally.
Pair of shoes sitting in front of the door.
Okay, so the multiple pair of shoes?
Yes.
Okay, and what's exhibit 128?
And just for the record, we don't object to it being admitted.
All right, well, we'll do it one at a time.
Bottom of a pair of shoes,
Okay,
soles.
and do you know which shoes those are?
Those I do not.
What color are the bottoms of those?
Look yellow. Worn out.
Okay,
Worn.
and then I just have you look at exhibit number 127. Can you see the bottoms of any of those shoes to help identify those?
No. But I know the bottom pair of my own shoes.
You're holding it up so I can see it.
Oh.
That shoe on the front left, the black one, what color at the bottom there? Can you get an idea of what color the sole is?
Yellow.
Similar to the bottoms that we're
Yes.
just looking at? Okay, and then I'd have you move on past the yellow bottoms to the next soles.
129,
I believe so, yes.
this one?
Yes, and so those are presumably the bottoms of George's newer Jordans that he bought?
You can see the Air Jordan down there too, so yes, I would say.
Okay, and then the last soles? Those would be the soles of
My shoes.
your shoes.
My Nike Shocks.
And again, so your shoes is exhibit what?
This is 130,
Okay, and then the previous one of his newer Jordans is exhibit,
129,
okay? And then the previous one with the tan or yellow soles,
127,
okay? And then,
or wait, no, this one 128, and then the
And-
picture of all the shoes is 127.
okay, permission to publish those?
Okay. Any objection to 127, 128, 129, or 130, subject to redirect?
My only concern is he's not able to recognize, especially the yellow shoe pattern. He's indicating, well, it's yellow, I don't know where they came from. And yeah, these other shoes seem to have yellow, so I don't think there's a foundation for him to admit that one. He certainly can identify his own pattern, and he can certainly say that it's a picture of Air Jordans with respect to the other bottoms of the shoes, but he clearly pointed out he wasn't familiar with where those shoes came from with respect to the yellow one.
That's 128. Relevance is to 128, or do you have any more foundation, Attorney Stebbins?
Well, Judge, yeah, initially he said he didn't know what soles those were, but when I had him look back at exhibit number 127, he was very clearly able to see that the black shoes on the left have a tan or yellow sole consistent with the soles that are shown in the subsequent exhibits. He testified that the soles with the Air Jordans are the Air Jordans that Mr. Burch recently purchased, and he testified that the other soles are the soles of his own shoes. So I think there's more than enough foundation.
Attorney Kerrigan, Maris?
Thank you. I agree he indicated that the shoes pictured shows some yellow, but that doesn't mean he knows what the bottom of the soles look like once you turn them over. That's not what he looked at. He just said they both seem to be yellow. He can't identify the pattern on the yellow ones.
But he can't say that the pattern itself is yellow, which is at least marginally consistent with the black shoe. I'm going to receive 127, 128, 129, and 130. And did you want them published
Yes, Judge.
the old-fashioned way?
I got it on the computer.
All right, then why don't we use the big board and they can be published on the screen?
All right, Mr. Wassenberg, so we have the image up on the screen. The photograph that you have in front of you is somewhat zoomed in compared to this, is that correct?
Correct.
This is 127. Is this an image of what exhibit 127 is?
Correct.
Do you notice these little yellow markers there?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with number 3, the blue and white shoes there. Those are yours?
Those are mine.
And the shoes directly in front of them, number 2, whose are those?
Those are George.
And those are the ones that you saw him come home with Jordan with?
It's either that one or the other one, but I know he bought a brand new pair.
Okay, so exhibit 1 and exhibit 2,
Yes.
or I'm sorry, not exhibit, numbers 1 and number 2, those are George's shoes?
Yes.
And then the other shoes that are in there that don't have any markers by them,
Those are mine.
those are all yours? Okay. We'll start with, moving on to shoe 1. And I believe you talked about this earlier when you look closer at the photograph. Do these appear to be the soles of those black shoes, number 1?
I've never seen the bottom of them, so I can't speculate.
Do they
over
seem
there.
consistent with,
Yes,
okay,
with the image, if you zoom in.
okay.
Wait, did they seem consistent with what?
Do they seem, based on your review of the close-up photo in front of you of this, you can see that the shoe number 1 has an outline of a brown, tan, yellow at the bottom, correct?
You gotta zoom in really quick, but yeah. The
Okay.
one that's zoomed in. Yes.
Okay. So based upon viewing that, and then again seeing the bottom of these shoes in these other pictures, it seems likely that this would be an image of those shoes.
I
Correct.
also make an objection that seeing the edge color on a shoe is not the same as saying this pattern is when you turn it over.
I think all the witness can do is say it's consistent with the color that he can see on the shoe as it's depicted in 127. All right, let's go on to the next question.
And look, these appear to be consistent with the bottoms of George's newer shoes?
Newer, like I said, it could have been the other pairs that are newer, but yes, those are the other ones of the gray ones. Gray and blue or whatever.
Okay. And then these shoes are your shoes?
Yes.
Thank you, I have no further questions.
Redirect.
No further questions. Thank you. I'd ask you to be excused.
All right. You may step down. Thank you, sir, and you're excused. You can just hand those to the clerk. State can call its next witness.
Laura Matson.
Good afternoon, Ms. Matson. If you'd come forward up to the witness stand, and Madam Clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Laura Matson, M-A-T-S-O-N.
Nancy, by whom are you employed?
The Wisconsin Department of Justice Crime Lab in Madison.
What is your current position at the crime lab?
I'm a forensic fingerprint and footwear examiner.
And how long have you been employed at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory?
In the lab, I've been employed since 2003.
And how long have you been performing the duties of a footwear examiner?
Since 2013.
Can you describe any sort of specialized training and experience you have in order to be a forensic analyst at the lab?
I have internal training from senior and advanced analysts at the Wisconsin Crime Lab, as well as internal training by Leanne Gray from the Illinois State Police. I've done some external training, which includes training through the FBI.
And your educational background prior to that?
I have my bachelor's from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in criminal justice. I've attended the Law Enforcement Academy, and I was a police officer for a short time prior to coming to the lab.
Ms. Madsen, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 131. Can you identify that exhibit for the jury?
Exhibit 131 is my statement of qualifications.
And that outlines your training and experience, including trainings that you have attended while employed at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory.
Yes, it does.
I would move for admission of the exhibit.
Any objection to 131, subject to cross?
No, thank you.
131 is received.
Ms. Madsen, you did some work in the case entitled Nicole Vanderheiden, the lab's case named Nicole Vanderheiden, is that correct?
Correct.
And in fact, you testified earlier that you are both a fingerprint and a footprint analyst. Is it true that you did both of those types of work on this case?
Yes, I did.
With respect to the fingerprint work specifically, did you generate some reports relative to your work on fingerprints in this case?
Yes, I did.
You were given a couple of different items to analyze for the potential existence of fingerprints.
Correct.
Do you recall the dates of your reports regarding fingerprints?
Can I refer to my notes?
If you need to.
Go right ahead.
My first report was issued on June 16th of 2016. My second report was on July 27th of 2016. And then my third report was November 2nd of 2016.
And in the June 16th report, what item were you asked to analyze?
Item AG.
And what is item AG?
It's described as a silver Samsung Galaxy S7.
And based on the item that you were provided, were you able to locate any finger friction ridge detail?
Yes, I was.
Were you sent items for potential comparison?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to make any conclusions based on the items that you were sent?
Inconclusive conclusions.
And in fact, you were given samples, you were given comparison samples for Douglas Dietrich and Gregory Joseph Matthew, is that correct?
Yes,
For comparison?
correct.
And you were not able to make any conclusions based on your comparison?
No.
And with respect to the July 27, 2016 report, which item was submitted in that report?
Item AI.
And AI was a white cropped and barrel purse?
Correct.
and then you again conducted an examination of that person. In that particular item, you were not able to determine any friction ridge detail on the item that would have been suitable for comparison.
That's correct, there was no friction ridge detail.
So that basically means there's no observable print on that item, so you couldn't compare it to anything.
That's correct.
And then the third report, I believe you indicated, was November 2nd,
Yes, November 2nd, 2016.
and the item that was submitted?
There were no items submitted for that item.
I'm
for
sorry,
that
you were
case.
given additional comparisons potentially, correct?
Yes.
And what were you given in order to compare to the Samsung Galaxy phone at that time?
I obtained fingerprint standards for comparison.
And what were those standards? From whom?
All the names.
Yes.
Jason Michael Lemons, Edward Allen Jackson, George Stephen Burch, aka George Stephen Burch Jr., Jeffrey Peter Hammond, and a Matthew P. Wassenberg.
And you were given those standards to compare to item AG, the silver Samsung Galaxy phone, is that correct?
To the friction ridge detail from that, yes.
And were you able to come to any conclusions regarding the using the standards that you were given?
No.
So again, the only item that you were given where you were able to locate friction ridge detail was the Samsung Galaxy phone, and given the number of standards that you were provided, you were not able to come to any conclusions.
Correct.
With respect to the footprint analysis that you conducted, did you also generate reports?
Yes, I did.
And the first report, July 5th, 2016, is that correct?
Yes, July 5th, 2016.
And in that report, what items were you given for analysis?
I was given item AO, which was a DVD-R, which contained images of impressions.
And do you recall who provided those images?
I believe that was submitted by the agency, Brown County.
And those images were of what?
Those contain images of impressions, which ended up being, after comparison, footwear impressions.
And could you note where those impressions were on? Where did you locate those impressions?
Those were what appeared to be on the back side, neck area of a body.
So they look like they were on someone's body. You actually were given the impression?
Yes, I was given the photos of those impressions.
And asked to compare them to footwear samples?
Yes.
What is a footwear impression, if you could describe that for the jury?
Footwear impression is anytime a footwear makes direct contact, physical contact with a surface, there is a chance that that contact is going to leave behind a footwear impression, which shows the characteristics of the footwear that is being worn at that time.
How are footwear comparisons done and identifications made?
Well, generally, if I'm going to be doing a comparison, I'll begin by analyzing any question impression. I'm going to look for any patterns that are within that impression, noting if there is any distortion, if there's any background interference in that impression. Once I do that, I'm going to analyze any known standards. So any known standards would be considered the footwear that you know belongs to somebody else. So it's a known shoe, and I'm going to take that shoe and do the same thing where I'm going to analyze the outsole design, look at the patterns, take any photographs, do any overlays. I'll begin my analysis at that point by comparing the pattern design of the question impression to the outsole design of the known standards, and if there's looking for similarities or dissimilarities. From there, once I look there, if there are similarities between the patterns, I'm going to go into looking at more detail. I'm going to look at the actual design size of the pattern to see if they're similar or not. So I'm going to look to see, are they the same? Are they the similar size? Do they have the same spacing between each other? Or there's going to be differences. Again, if there's differences, I'm going to stop and basically I'll be making an exclusion at that point. If there are similarities, I'm going to go further and I'm going to look for similarities in wear, and I'm also going to look for individual characteristics. So individual characteristics are anything that's randomly acquired to your outsole. So if you step on a rock, for instance, or if you scrape your shoe and you make a long cut, that's going to be individual to your outsole based on the location, the size, and the shape of that. In order to make an identification in a footwear comparison, you have to have those individual characteristics, and they have to be in the same position, they have to be in the same size, and they have to be in the same shape.
Prior to drafting your first report on July 5th of 2016, did you receive known footwear samples to allow you to attempt to make a comparison between the impressions you were given and the known footwear?
Yes, I was.
Did you receive the footwear itself, or did you receive photographs?
I received the footwear itself.
And what was how many items did you receive initially prior to your July 5th, 2016 report?
I received 2 pairs, so 4 total shoes.
And the first pair was what brand and type?
It was item I, which was an Adidas Vigor TR, athletic shoe size 12.
And with respect to item I, were you able to come to any conclusions regarding an identification as to whether that was consistent with the impressions that you were given from the body?
Item I was excluded to have made those impressions.
And you were given a second item J, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type of shoe was item J?
Item J was a pair of Jordan basketball team size 11 and a half athletic shoe.
Were you able to form any conclusions with respect to item J?
My conclusion for item J was limited association with indications of non-association.
Can you describe for the jury what that means?
Sorry. So a limited association, there were some similar class characteristics. Class characteristics are going to be, like what I mentioned earlier, the pattern. So in this instance, there was a similar pattern of the herringbone. Herringbone is kind of a zigzag pattern, which is very common in a lot of shoes. So I found similarities in the herringbone pattern in one portion of the impression, but in another portion of the impression, I found some indications of non-association. So in that situation, because I had a little bit of both, and because there was so much going on within the impression itself, I concluded that there was some association, but there was also non-association.
So some things would have been consistent with those shoes being involved, but then there were other things that would have been inconsistent with those shoes being involved in making that
Correct.
impression. And then you issued a subsequent report on August 18th of 2016, is that correct?
Yes.
And in that report, what was the item that you were asked to compare at that time?
Item BI, which was a dark colored tank top.
So in that instance, the shoes that you were given, the standard shoes would have been the same, but you were given an additional item to potentially do a comparison?
Yes.
And what was your determination when you received the tank top?
When I received the tank top, I noted that there was a possible impression on the tank top prior to doing my comparisons.
And then did you do comparisons?
Yes, I did do a comparison to the same standards that I mentioned before, to the pattern that I found on the tank top, and I concluded that that the impression itself lacked sufficient detail.
So you actually did not have a detailed enough impression from the tank top in order to compare it to the shoes?
Correct.
And you did a third report in this case as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the date of that report?
The third report was issued on October 17th, 2016.
And what was the item that you were asked to compare at that point in time?
2 additional pairs of shoes were submitted, so another 4 pairs of shoes were submitted for comparison to the 2 impressions that I previously mentioned.
And what item number was the first set of shoes that you were asked to compare to the impressions?
Item BX.
And what was that item identified as?
It's a Nike high top, size 13.
Is there a color associated with the Nike high top?
They were blue and white.
And with respect to the Nike high top, did you compare that then to the photos of the impressions, is that from the body? Is that the comparison you were asked to make?
Yes.
And were you able to make any conclusions with respect to the blue Nike high tops and the photos of the impressions?
The impression from the body or from both?
I'm sorry, did you do both?
Yes.
And what was your conclusion with respect to each of those items respectively?
So for the comparison to the impression on the body, it was the same as the previous one, where it was limited association with indications of non-association.
And then were you also asked to compare to the tank top?
Yes. And the tank top, I had also the same conclusion, where I concluded that the impression itself lacks sufficient detail.
And the second pair of shoes is item what?
Item BY.
And what is item BY?
Item BY was also a pair of Nike high tops, size 13, blue and white in color.
And what was your determination with respect to those shoes?
Those had the same conclusions of limited association with indications of non-association to the impression on the body and lack sufficient detail for the impression from the tank top.
So based on all of the shoes that you're able to compare, some of the shoes showed some similarities, but even the ones that showed similarities had inconsistencies within those shoe patterns.
Yes.
So you were not able to make what you would determine to be a positive identification from any of the shoes that were provided to you?
That's correct.
No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
None, thank you.
Ms. Matson, thank you. You may step down.
Am I released from both subpoenas? Am I released from both subpoenas?
No, any objection?
None, thank you.
Okay, you're released. Both subpoenas. Thank you and have a safe trip back.
Thank you.
Your next witness?
Judge, can we just have a moment?
Sure. Mr. Ertl, if you want to step forward, please, up to the witness stand, and Jordy will swear you in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is John Ertl. Last name is spelled E-R-T-L.
Counsel, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, thank you, no problem. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ertl, can you state for the record how you are employed?
I'm employed as a forensic scientist at the State Crime Laboratory, and I'm based in Madison.
And how long have you been working with the State Crime Laboratory?
I started with the State Crime Laboratory system in Milwaukee in 1997.
What is your current position with the State Crime Laboratory?
I'm a forensic scientist, advanced, and I work in the DNA analysis unit where my main responsibility is as a automation administrator. We have liquid handling robots, and I'm the guy in charge of those. I also do crime scene response, and I have been working with bloodstain pattern analysis as well.
And can you describe what your primary duties are as a crime scene response team member?
So that's a service that the State Crime Laboratory provides for law enforcement agencies around the state. If they come upon a situation they don't feel comfortable and they feel that the expertise of the forensic scientists at the crime laboratory would be of benefit, then they give us a call and we'll come out to the scene and we'll apply the things that we normally do to evidence in the laboratory, we'll apply that at the scene.
What is your educational background?
I'm a graduate of the University of Wisconsin at Parkside. It's in Kenosha. I had a chemistry degree, and then I went on and got a master's degree in molecular biology.
And do you have some specialized training in addition to your background, in addition to your education, with respect to forensic sciences?
Yeah, for forensic sciences, when I started it, there weren't a lot of school programs out there to train you in that. When I started it, it was more on-the-job training. So for the past 20-some years, I've been working as a forensic scientist. We have mandatory annual training, and anything that I get involved in with, there's lots of training and proficiency testing involved with it.
Were you asked in your role as a forensic scientist to assist local law enforcement with a death involving Nicole Vanderheiden?
We were, yes.
And what was your first involvement in that case?
When her body had been found, we were asked to come out and assist in examining the area for any type of evidence that may have been there.
That was on May 21st of 2016?
That's correct.
And you were called out to the field where her body was located?
That's correct.
And what specifically was your role upon arrival on the scene that day?
There were two of us from the crime laboratory there. I was the team leader, and the other guy was a photographer. The first thing we do at any crime scene would be to videotape and take photographs, document the scene as we have found it. Then we begin a search of the area, looking for any type of evidence that might be in the area. And this scene, there really wasn't a lot other than the body, and I believe we found a couple of trails of disturbed vegetation where it looked like someone had come and gone.
When you say at this scene there really wasn't a lot, can you describe what you mean by that?
So it's off of a roadway, and there's a ditch, and it's kind of a low marshy area, brushy vegetation, grassy, turning into small trees, and then an embankment up to a plowed farm field.
What are some of the things that you might typically be looking for on that scene?
Anything that would be brought into such an area that you would suspect it wouldn't belong. That might even include trash thrown out of someone's car may have blown in. We would look at that. This area was far enough back that that type of material wasn't there. Actually, there wasn't anything there that you wouldn't expect to find in a marshy, woody area. There were no stray pop cans, soda bottles, certainly no weapons. Didn't find, she didn't have much clothing on her at all. Didn't find any discarded clothing. We would look for footwear impressions, anything that would show who had been there recently, if they had left anything behind.
Yeah, is it fair to say that with the exception of the evidence on the body itself, there was very little of evidentiary value on that scene?
That's true, yes.
And with respect to evidence collection on that scene, who would you indicate was primarily responsible by the time you arrived?
Well, the Brown County Sheriff's Department is the agency that requested our assistance, so they are in charge of that scene. The medical examiners had already been to the body and declared it dead. They asked us then, once we had gotten our photographs and whatnot, that they could come back to the body and collect swabbings from it.
So it was the medical examiner's office who was conducting the swabs of the body, not the state crime laboratory?
That's true, yes.
Do you recall about how long you were on scene that night on May 21st, 2016, potentially into the 22nd?
That's in my report. I don't recall. I know we arrived in May around dusk, and we worked through the night.
Mr. Ertl, I'm showing you it's been marked as Exhibit 132. Can you identify that document?
132 is the report of my activities at the scene where her body was found on May 21st and 22nd.
And the date of that report is what?
The date on the report is May 23rd, 2016.
But that involves the report of your activities on May 21st, 2016 into May 22nd of 2016?
That's correct.
Does reviewing the report allow you to refresh your recollection as to the time you left the scene that night?
We left the scene at approximately 2:45 a.m. on May 22nd, 2016.
All right, I would move for admission of 132.
Subject to cross, any objection?
No, Judge.
132 is received.
And Mr. Ertl, did you have opportunity to then come back to Brown County to assist in the investigation of this case in another aspect?
Yes, I did.
And when did that occur?
On May May 24th, we returned to Nicole's residence.
Okay, I note that you were looking at Exhibit 133. Could you identify what Exhibit 133 is for the jury?
So 133 is my report on my activities at the scene of the decedent's residence located at 2329 Berkeley Road in the town of Ledgeview, Brown County. And it also includes all of my notes that I took at the scene.
So in addition to an official report that you generate, is it common for you to also generate notes regarding your activities on a scene?
Yes, while we're at the scene, we'll take notes of what we're doing, what we find.
And what was the purpose of your response on May 24th of 2016?
Again, the Brown County Sheriff's Department had asked us to come in and assist them in examining this scene for any blood stains that might be present within the scene. They had previously been in there and found some things which they thought were blood, and they wanted us to come in and apply a more sensitive technique that we use to detect blood.
And can you explain the techniques that you typically use to detect blood on a scene?
Well, the first technique is to use your eyes, bright lights, and just look for blood. It's got a distinctive color. You look around for that. If you see any stains that look like they might be blood, then we have a chemical test where we can take a small portion of that stain, put it onto a cotton swab, add some chemistry to it, and it'll turn bright pink if it's potentially blood. It's not a conclusive test, but it tells you you're going in the right direction. That would be a sample you would collect, take back to the laboratory for additional testing. If you're looking for blood that you can no longer see, it may have originally been small, very small stains that are difficult to find, or it may be on a background that is too busy or the wrong color to make blood stand out. Or someone had tried to clean up blood. We have another method where we create a solution of this material. It's called luminol. You put it in a spray bottle. You darken the room, darken all the windows in the room, turn the lights out. After your eyes have adjusted, then you can spray various surfaces on the room, within the room, and blood will then glow, create a faint blue glow in the dark in reaction with that chemical. Those areas are marked and the lights come back on. We'll go back and swab those, test them with our other reagent that turns pink, and if they're positive then we'd collect those and bring them back to the laboratory.
And while you were inside the residence on Berkeley, were you directed to specific areas of the residence that may contain items of evidentiary value?
We were. They had been in there previously and found things they thought looked like blood to them, and so they were particularly interested in those areas.
And were two of those areas located in the garage?
Well, the garage was one of the areas. The entryway off of the garage had a powder room in it. I believe they had found a tissue in there that had blood on it. So we luminoled the garage, we luminoled the hallway and the powder room. We then went upstairs. They had found some things in the master suite. So we applied luminol to the bedroom area, the entry to that room, and then into the master bathroom and that entire room. We also went then down into the lower level of the house where they had a finished game room, and we luminoled that.
When you talk about applying luminol to the garage, can you describe, are you just looking for it in a small area, or are you using luminol throughout the garage? What was your tactic on that date?
Well, except for the ceiling, we're looking for any place blood may have landed had a bloodletting event occurred there. So gravity's going to take over. Eventually it's going to land on the floor. But we also look on the walls. If a person has it on them, if they walk through a doorway, door jambs are really nice, doorknobs, the doors themselves. Anything in the room that may have been touched, and it's a spray bottle, so you're spritzing things, they're about 4 feet away from you, so one spritz you get an area roughly 4 feet wide and maybe 2 feet tall, and you cover the entire area.
And that was done in Mr. Dietrich's garage?
It was.
And did you notice any areas of evidentiary value in the garage?
There were 3 luminol reactive areas on the floor of the garage near the overhead garage door opening. We tested those 3 areas with the other test is called phenolphthalein. That's the one that turns pink. We tested those 3 areas. One of them did not turn pink, the other 2 did. So then we collected swabs from those areas.
And those are the swabs that were collected and taken and then brought to the state laboratory for further testing?
That's correct.
With respect to the other areas of the home that you mentioned where luminol was used, you mentioned that you went into the hallway and the powder room right off of the garage, is that correct?
That's correct.
And was luminol used in the hallway?
It was.
And was there any indicators of potential blood in the hallway?
No, there weren't.
And with respect to the powder room, the location where blood had previously been found on tissues and sweatshirt, did you find any evidence of blood within the powder room?
No, we didn't.
You were also indicating that you went up to the master bedroom area.
Correct.
You used luminol. Where in the master bedroom did you use luminol?
The doorway from the hallway, so the exterior, the interior of that doorway, and then I believe the area from the doorway alongside of the bed to near the nightstand, and then the doorway into the bathroom, and then the entire bathroom.
Now, when you say the entire bathroom, does that mean you sprayed the entire shower, including the area of the drain?
That's correct.
And the handles on the shower itself?
Yes.
The sinks and the vanity as well?
Correct.
And what was the result?
And there were no luminol positive stains that then also tested positive with phenolphthalein.
Okay. In fact, you didn't even need to use the phenolphthalein in those rooms because there was nothing that tested positive for luminol?
I'd have to check my notes, but I believe that is the case.
I'm sorry, I think I said tested positive for luminol. I meant using the luminol, nothing showed up as positive for the presence of blood.
Right.
And then again, you sprayed another area in the lower level of the home, is that right?
That's correct.
And about how large was the area in the basement or gaming room that you checked for blood?
I believe the area was of interest because it had a row of windows along the far wall that were basically at ground level on the back of the house, and it would be a way to get in and out. So that row of windows was in the main part of the room, and I believe they had a couch, a weight set, and a ping pong table in that area. It's hard for me to judge in this room, but roughly from where the flags are over maybe to here. I don't know how long that is. It's a fairly good-sized room. And then off of that room, maybe a third of that size was another couch, and then like a video game area where they had a big television set and whatnot, and controllers. So that whole area.
Let's say, would you agree it's probably about 30 feet from the flags to the end of that witness stand?
That's probably a fair estimate. Obviously, the witness had indicated the flags, which are up against the far wall of the courtroom to the end of the witness stand. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
What about, do you think 30 feet, Mr. Ertl? Is it an approximate area?
Let's say 20 to 30 feet.
Agreed, Attorney Stebbins? All right. Go ahead.
And you use the luminol within that entire room, and then the other room about a third larger, the sitting area.
Yes.
That entire area was sprayed with luminol.
Yeah.
And what was the result? Were there any positive indicators for blood?
No, there were not.
I would move for the admission of Exhibit 133.
Any objections subject to cross?
No, Judge.
133 is received.
I apologize. I think you had mentioned earlier you said there was an area in a doorway in the garage that officers had thought may have some evidentiary value. Is that, do you recall where that was?
I don't recall offhand that in this case, the officers had pointed one out or not, but in general, doorways are constricted areas where you have to get through and you may brush up against it.
To the entrance to the garage and then the entrance from the garage to the house, are those areas that would have been covered with your luminol search of the garage?
Yes, they would have.
Because based on your training and experience, those are areas of general evidentiary value.
Yes, they are.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Mr. Ertl. You were first dispatched to the scene where the body was discovered, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was on May 21st?
21st, yes.
And sounds like you and your team did a very careful examination of that scene and documentation of that scene, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you indicated that that the documentation of the scene as it exists is one of the first things you do.
It is.
Why is that?
Well, if we're going to go into a scene and start collecting evidence, we're going to move things. And we want to document how things were before we begin our activities.
And that documentation, I believe you said, consists of photography as well as videotaping?
Correct. In addition to that, we will quite often draw sketches or diagrams. But in this case, I believe the Brown County Sheriff's Department they have electronic equipment for large areas. They can make much better diagrams than we can by hand.
And you said that you were the team lead?
For the two of us, yes.
Okay.
That means I would write the report and I would come and do this.
And then the other people on your team would be doing the photography and the videotaping and other things you asked of them?
Right.
And they're doing that at your direction, essentially?
Correct.
So, hey, we need a photo of this, we need to document this, and they do that?
Correct.
Okay. And then it was a few days later, I think May 24th, you essentially did the same thing at the Berkeley residence?
Correct.
So again, before doing any sort of moving of objects, you and your team carefully moved through that residence?
Correct.
And when you thought you saw something that might be important, take photos of it?
Right. Generally, you go around without the thought of what's important or not important, but try to get overall pictures of everything that's there. And then as you begin looking, and if you find something, then yes,
So
do closer-ups.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So essentially, the first priority is just capturing the scene as it existed.
Correct.
And you did do that in this case?
In this case, although we weren't the first group who had been in there searching, so we did capture it as it was when we got there, but it had been previously searched.
Okay, so you and your team moved through the residence and captured the residence as it existed on your first impression of it.
Right.
Judge, may I have permission to approach the witness?
Go right ahead. Stebbins, there are a number of photographs. Why don't you start introducing maybe some to the witness while Madam Clerk continues to mark the others?
Okay.
Just to move things along. Go ahead.
Well, Judge, I think I would just rather go through each one with him. I think it might actually be quicker if once they're marked, I can just hand him things that.
Third case.
That's okay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk's pretty efficient.
Judge, now that we have a few done, I'm not going to elicit testimony, but I'm going to pass these exhibits over to Mr. Ertl so he can begin reviewing them.
That's fine.
These exhibits start at 134, and I'll let you know where they end. So for the record, then, these photographs have been labeled from 134 through 157. And Mr. Ertl, I'm just going to put these here. Once you get through those, if you could just review these ones as well. Sure. Have you had a chance to review all those?
I paged through them, yes.
Okay, and do they appear consistent with, I guess, your walkthrough of the residence on the 24th?
They do, yeah.
And I know they're not every single photo you guys have taken, but those are photos that you and your team took?
Right, they are.
And you're actually, are you able to tell that by the bottom of the pictures?
Yeah, there's a state crime laboratory identifying information on their footers.
Okay, and that identifying information is consistent with your case involving the investigation of Nicole Vanderheiden?
It is, yes.
Judge, I would move for the admission of all of these exhibits, and I'd ask permission to publish them. And I will just note for everyone's sake that I don't plan on doing a detailed analysis of each photo, but just having him, I guess, identify the photos and moving on to the next.
So you're going to start at 134 and then go through
Yes.
one by one? Right. Any objections subject to redirect exhibits 134 through 157? All right. Exhibits 134 through 157 inclusive are received, they're admitted, and they can be published using the big screen.
And again, Mr. Ertl, I'm going to go through these photos on the big screen. I think you'll be able to see them on this TV. Otherwise, you can turn around and watch on the projector. And then I'll just ask you to identify what the photo is a photo of as we go through them.
May I interrupt a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that the photographer will also do, and I don't know if we provide it in this case, but we are providing it now, is a photo log, which actually tells you what each picture is. So on some of these, you're going to count on my memory.
Okay, well,
Right.
we'll just go through the photos and see what you remember, okay? All right, so, Mr. Ertl, does this appear to be a picture of the residence?
Yeah, that appears to be a view from the street, looking at the attached garage. There's a utility door for the garage open there. The main garage door is closed. And it's, I believe that's Brown County's crime scene van and tent set up in the driveway.
Is that open door the one that you and your team entered through?
It is.
Mr. Ertl, you have a nice soft voice. I just ask you to speak either a little louder right into the mic, right?
Mr. Ertl, moving on to the next photograph. Is this another image of the outside of the house?
It is.
Somewhat to the left of that service door,
Correct. Heading towards the back,
heading towards the,
the back of the house,
okay.
but still along the side.
If we could, before we're talking about what each of the exhibits is, can we just clarify which exhibit it is? So have Mr. Ertl actually say the exhibit number.
That's right. I'm assuming the house was 134. Is that right? Is that right, Mr. Ertl?
It is correct.
All right, and then the next
134.
photo showing
135.
the back was 135. All right, then we can continue.
And Mr. Ertl, is this a photo of exhibit 136?
It is.
And this is the garage of the residence?
That is. That's a view from nearby where that outside utility door was, looking across the garage to the door that you would enter the house through.
And next to that door that you would enter the house, there's a shoe rack next to it
There is.
and a refrigerator?
Yes.
Mr. Ertl, is this exhibit 137?
It is.
And is this a view from in the home looking back towards the garage?
It is. And that photo looks odd. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the laboratory seal. It's supposed to be a blue circle, but in this rendition, it's a blue oval. So the whole picture's been compressed vertically. The door actually looks taller than that. It's crunched. But yes, that's the entry door to the garage is seen from the hallway inside the house.
And I think some of these, if you notice on this image, the crime lab, I guess, information is on the right side of the photograph as opposed to below the photograph. Is that correct?
On these printings, it is, yes.
Okay. So in other words, the photos are essentially turned so that they can be projected on the screen in the way they actually existed?
Right. If a photographer is going to take a picture of a door, he'll quite often rotate the camera to better fit it in the frame. And so when you print it out, if you had printed that out the way it had been taken, the door would be laying on its side and we'd all be doing one of those. Turning our heads to match what reality really looks like.
And is this exhibit 138?
138, yes.
And that's the laundry room?
That's a laundry room off of the hallway leading into the garage, yes.
And the doors on, I believe that's, maybe you don't recall, but the washer door is open? I'm sorry, the dryer door?
I'd have to get a better view of that to tell you which is which there.
One of the machines has an open door though?
One of the machines, the door is open, yes.
And is this exhibit 139?
139, yes.
And this is the bathroom off the garage?
Right, that's what I was referring to as the powder room.
Is this exhibit 140?
140, yes.
And is this an image of the living room of the residence?
It's a part of the living room, yes.
Okay. Here we have exhibit 141, is that correct?
141,
And this is another view of the living room
right, pretty much looking the opposite direction,
towards the kitchen
towards the kitchen, yes.
and the door to the basement?
Door to the basement, and I believe right in front of that is the door that would get you to the hallway out to the garage.
Okay. And is this exhibit 142?
142, yes.
And is this essentially the opposite of the previous image, the kitchen looking towards the living room?
Correct.
Is this exhibit 143?
It is, 143.
And is this an image of the office?
I believe that is, yes. There's
Okay.
a computer on a desk in there, and yes. I didn't recall all those mounts, but
Okay.
yes,
And exhibit 144, this is another view of the office?
it is.
Exhibit 145 would be a photo of, I guess, what was within the contents of something found in that office?
Correct. Looks like a cell phone right in the middle of the picture.
And is this exhibit 146?
It is,
And it appears to be another photograph taken from within the office?
correct.
Here we have 147. Is this the basement you were describing earlier?
Right, that would be the TV video area, I believe.
Okay. And 148, this is a photo of the downstairs bathroom?
It's 148, and it's definitely a bathroom. But, without referring to my notes, I would, if it could be in the downstairs. It doesn't look like any other bathroom I recall.
Okay. And is that just a close-up of the sink that was in the previous photo?
It is, and that's exhibit 149.
Thank you. And what exhibit number is this?
150.
And this is an image that was taken off one of the storage rooms in the garage? I'm sorry, the basement?
In the basement, yeah. It was one of the storage rooms, and it had a box with a bunch of cords in it.
Okay, we'll move on to exhibit 152. This is another storage room in the basement? Or, I'm sorry, am I on 151?
151, yeah.
Okay, and this is an image of another storage room in the basement?
Yeah.
Okay. 152, is that the next image that's on the screen, exhibit 152?
Yes, it is.
And this is a photograph of one of the upstairs bedrooms?
It is.
And we can go on to exhibit number 153. Is this exhibit 153?
It is.
And is that a view of the master suite, I believe you referred to it as?
I believe that's the master bedroom there, yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next photo. What exhibit number is that?
154, it's another view of the master bedroom.
Thank you. We can move on to exhibit 155.
Now you're in the master bedroom looking back into the hallway and into the master bathroom.
And if we go to the next image, it's kind of hard to see on my screen, but I believe you'll be able to orient yourself to this next photo. But the next exhibit, is that exhibit 156?
It is 156,
And that's what's on the screen right now?
correct.
Can you recall where this was?
It doesn't come to mind exactly, no, it does not. I believe it was in or near that room, but I can't point to it.
If I would direct your attention to the area between that mirror and the bathroom frame. Are you able to identify anything there that would be consistent?
There is a similar looking mark on the wall, about halfway between the door frame and the mirror, yes.
Okay. And you said it's a similar looking mark to this that is contained in Exhibit 156?
It is.
Okay.
And based on the height of that yellow ruler, looks like it's in the right spot.
Thank you. And lastly, is this exhibit number 157?
157, yes.
And this is a shot of the bathroom in the master suite?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Ertl, just briefly going back to your testimony regarding the use of luminol.
Yes?
I believe you testified, and we've seen the basement now, that you sprayed that kind of along one of the walls in the basement.
I don't recall a picture of the large area, but you showed a picture of the video gaming area.
Okay. Was luminol used in the bathroom of the basement?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you. I have no further questions. I appreciate it.
Any redirect?
One moment, Your Honor, I just want to look at some of the exhibits.
Are you going to ask that some of these be published on the big screen?
Two of them, right, and that's what we were talking about here, is the two photos.
All right, that's fine.
Mr. Ertl, I'm showing you what has been marked as 153, which we viewed already. I think you indicated that that appears to be the master bedroom.
Correct.
You're aware that that room had been gone through or searched prior to you arriving, correct?
Well, I don't know what had been done, but I know Brown County had been in there before us.
Okay. And that does appear to be the master bedroom?
Yes.
Those are the two windows that face the roadway?
Orientate myself, I believe they are, yes.
There were no other windows in that room other than those two windows?
Right.
They appear to be blocked by a crib and by a chair, correct?
Correct.
And I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 156. I think you talked about that earlier. That appears to be a small hole in the wall. The ruler, is that inches?
Yes.
So the size of that hole is about an inch? About an inch high, maybe an inch wide?
Yeah, roughly, yes.
No further questions.
Any recross?
No, thank you.
All right, Mr. Ertl, thank you very much. You may step down, you're excused. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our afternoon break, 15 minutes, and then we'll reconvene.
All rise.
Okay, we're back on the record in the Burch matter. The appearances are the same as they've been throughout the day, and the state is ready for its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We would call Jordan Schuyler to the stand.
Attorney, if you come forward, and Jody will swear you in by the witness stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Jordan Schuyler, Schuyler.
Thank you.
All right, Jordan, you may be seated. Just speak into the microphone, please, and then Attorney Kerrigan Maris whenever you're ready.
Just make yourself comfortable. If you feel like you need to scoot forward a little bit in the chair. There's some water up there, too, if you feel like you need it. Thank you. Jordan, how old are you?
I'm 22,
And what's your birth date?
September 3rd, 1995.
And have you always lived in this area?
Yeah, my whole life.
Where do you live? What's your address?
329 Bader Street.
And that's in Green Bay?
Yes.
Have you always lived at that address?
Yes.
So you were born in that home?
Yeah.
Okay. Who do you live there with?
My mother,
And what's her name?
Heather Schuyler.
And I'm going to ask you, are you employed now?
No.
Were you employed in May of 2016?
Yes.
Did you have a job before that? Was it the same job in April?
Yeah.
Where'd you work?
At Blackstone.
And what's Blackstone?
It's a restaurant.
It's It's been around for quite a while?
Yeah.
Okay, what'd you do there?
I was like cleaning and I helped waitress occasionally.
Okay. And do you remember when you started working there or when you first went into business there? Just roughly?
Roughly around like a little bit before April.
Okay. In 2016 though, right?
Yeah.
Did your mom also work there?
Yeah.
Did you meet anyone while you were there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yeah, sorry, yes.
No problem. And what was that person's name who you met?
George Burch.
Okay. And what did you call him?
Steve.
Okay. Was he also working there?
Correct.
What kind of jobs did he do?
He was the cook.
Do you remember what month it was approximately you met him?
Around April, end April, middle.
April 2016.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Did you become friends at first?
Correct.
At some point in time, did you start dating him?
Correct.
Did it become a romantic relationship?
Correct.
And how often would you see each other, say in April or May of 2016?
Almost every day.
Did you stay in contact as well when you weren't with each other?
Yes.
And to me, that would mean a phone. At someone your age, how would you be in touch with people?
Texting, calling, Facebook, Snapchat,
Okay.
any type of social media.
Did you hear from him pretty often?
Yes.
And during April and May of 2016, were you also responding pretty often?
Yes.
But you actually were with him on a pretty daily basis throughout a week?
Yes.
Did you know where he was living?
Yes.
Where was he living?
He was living with Ed and Linda over off of Broadway, kind of. I forgot what street it was on.
Okay. And was that the Jacksons?
Yes.
Did you ever go to that home?
Yes.
And you got to meet the Jacksons?
Correct.
Did he ever come to your home?
No.
Was that on Greenwood Avenue, if you recall, his residence with the Jacksons?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Did you consider yourself being in a close relationship with Mr. Burch?
I thought so, yes.
Do you remember there being a time that Mr. Burch told you that he was going to go on a fishing trip?
Yes.
Did you know with whom he was going?
With Ed and like another boy, I think, or something.
Okay. Were they heading down to Racine?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Did you go with him?
No.
Do you know if Linda was going with?
No, Linda was not going with.
Okay. And do you remember, was that a weekend trip they were going to take?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Okay. Did you, on the Friday before he was leaving, did you see him on that occasion?
We were talking, and I'm pretty sure I hung out with him in like the morning.
But not the evening, is that correct?
No.
I'm sorry, I put that badly. Were you with him in the evening on that Friday?
No, not the evening.
Okay. And you would expected him to be gone that weekend, is that correct?
Correct.
While he was gone, did you find out, did he in fact go fishing? Did you see any pictures or anything?
Yes, he sent me a picture to my phone of him catching the fish.
Okay. And was that something that he would normally do, keep track of what he was doing and send you pictures sometimes?
Yes.
Did you see him when he returned after the fishing trip?
Yes.
Do you remember, did he come back that Saturday or did he come back Sunday, if you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing him after the fishing trip.
And it was right after he got back, is that correct?
I would say maybe a couple hours, and then I came over and seen him.
Okay. Now, was his hair pretty short back then?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about his head, anything unusual?
No.
Did you see any injuries, any bruising, abrasions to his head?
No.
Did you continue to stay in your relationship with him through May of 2016?
Yes.
Okay. And did your relationship continue, this romantic relationship, in June and July and August of 2016?
Yes.
Did you still see him pretty much every day or stay in contact with him very regularly?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were aware he was arrested in September of 2016, is that right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Okay. Up until the time of his arrest, at any point in time, did he indicate to you that something unusual had happened before he went on that fishing trip to Racine?
No.
Did he ever discuss with you a homicide that had happened off Hoffman Road of a young mother? Did that subject ever come up with him?
No.
Just gonna have her idea. I am going to ask if you could tell me, is Mr. Burch the person that you had been seeing? And let me rephrase that. Are you still in a relationship with Mr. Burch?
No.
Mr. Burch, you were having the relationship back in 2016. Is he in the courtroom?
Yes.
Could you tell me what he's wearing and where he's seated, please?
And to the right, he's wearing a blue shirt.
I'd ask the record to reflect identification of the defendant.
Record will reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant in open court. Go ahead.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination.
Hey, Jordan, just a few more questions for you, okay? When you were back in, I guess, May, June of 2016, were you aware that George bought some new shoes?
Yes.
Were you with him when he bought those shoes?
Yes.
You remember why he bought those shoes?
Because his other shoes were very bad.
What do you mean?
Like, they were dirty, there were holes in them. It just wasn't a good pair of shoes.
Did you make fun of him for him?
Yeah,
You think that might have had something to do with why he got new shoes?
probably.
Okay. And then Attorney Kerrigan-Mares was asking you if you observed any injuries to his head once he got back from that fishing trip. You actually didn't observe any injuries at all, is that correct?
Correct.
Nothing on his hands,
Correct.
anywhere?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions, thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you. I'd ask that you be excused.
All right, Jordan, thank you. You may step down and you're excused. State's next witness.
State will recall Detective Slinger.
Detective Slinger, if you'll come forward, and Jody will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Brian Slinger, S as in Sam, Linger.
We left off the arrest of Mr. Burch. Do you recall on what date that was?
September 7th, 2016.
And after that arrest, did you seek to obtain some biographical information of Mr. Burch?
I did.
And were you able to learn his height and weight at that time?
Yes.
And what was that?
I believe he advised me he was 6'7", 260 pounds.
What about a date of birth? Did the defendant provide that to you as well?
February 14th of 1978.
Subsequent to that arrest, do you continue investigating this crime?
I did.
And can you describe some of the things you were investigating from that point on?
From the arrest on, we were focusing on evidence that would have been obtained during the search warrant at his residence on 15th, as well as looking into statements that were given by people that we had identified that were associated with Mr. Burch.
Are you continuing at this point to obtain DNA samples from individuals?
Yes, once we had identified some of the people that were associated with Mr. Burch, Ed Jackson, Linda Jackson, some of the other people that you've seen up here, Jeffrey Hammond, Matthew Wassenberg, we did reach out to them, obtain statements from them, as well as ask for a consensual buccal swab for their DNA.
And did you obtain those buccal swabs?
We did.
And were those ultimately sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab?
Correct.
And again, based on your prior testimony, you were primarily responsible for deciding which items got sent to the lab?
Correct.
Going back to the initial stages of the investigation, are you familiar with the area around Doug and Nicole's residence?
I am.
And are you able to say approximately how many times you've driven by that location?
Since the crime, or since the incident, probably well over 100. During the investigation, I had pretty much driven it every day to walk through everything back in my head. I also have some acquaintances that live back in that neighborhood, so I had been over to their residence for social matters as well.
When you say you're driving from that neighborhood, where are you driving to when you travel that path?
Well, that path would be just south of the Brown County Sheriff's Office, so I would travel that route back to the Sheriff's Office, take a left-hand turn, so going back westbound on Hoffman Road, and then traveling down to where the body was located near Bellevue Street on Hoffman.
So driving from Berkeley Road to Hoffman Road, can you describe that general drive for us?
Like stated earlier, it's about 3 miles, 3.2 miles between there and that. There's not a lot of residences, mostly industrial businesses. A few, I believe there's a park along the way. And then once you get down to where the sheriff's office is, it becomes a little bit more congested with new businesses and new developments.
And looking specifically towards Hoffman Road from GV or Monroe Road, are you able to see the location where Nikki's body was located from GV?
You are not. The road on Hoffman Road goes to the west for a brief period of time, and when you get past the Sheriff's Department, there is an elderly care center or some sort of facility like that, which would be on the south side of the road, probably like 6 or 7 stories high. And then Hoffman Road curves to the left or back to the south, so there's a pretty good curve in the road where you cannot see directly down Hoffman Road.
And what about from Berkeley Road? Are you able to see the field in Hoffman Road from that location?
No.
And the area around Doug and Nicole's residence, are there street lamps in that area?
There are some.
Where are those located?
The closest one I could find to their actual residence would have been a little bit further to the east, near the next closest intersection, which probably would have been about 3 or 4 houses down.
You are familiar with the area where there was blood located on the roadway on Berkeley Road?
Yes.
And are there any street lamps in that area?
No.
At a certain point during the investigation, you also sent items that were located in Litchfield Park to the crime lab, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you describe, we've heard several different names from them, can you describe what was sent and what was located in Litchfield?
They were a brown paper towel that you would typically find at a bar or a restaurant that would come out of one of those machines that you have on the wall that are used more in an industrial or business type of setting.
And there were also tissues located in the Dietrich residence, correct?
Correct.
And were those similar to the ones located in Litchfield Park?
No, the tissues at the residence were more along the lines of like either a white Kleenex or white toilet paper type of thing.
And that tissue located in the Dietrich residence was also sent to the crime lab?
The tissue from the residence as well as the tissue from the bathroom was sent to the crime lab, from the bathroom at the park, the brown paper towel.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Sergeant Slinger, just 1 or 2 questions. So you talked about being very familiar with Berkeley Road and GV, correct?
Correct.
When you're driving north on GV, can you see Bellevue Road from that intersection?
When you're driving north on Bellevue Road, can you see?
When you're driving north on GV,
Okay.
and you're at the intersection of GV and Hoffman Road,
Okay.
can you see Bellevue Street?
No.
And that's when you're traveling north?
Correct.
And what about when you're traveling south? Because you
No.
have a different view.
No, it would be blocked by the development and there's a sheriff's department, there's a hotel, there's a lot of businesses in there.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, for now, Detective Slinger, you may step down again. State's next witness? Sure. To discuss scheduling. We're actually moving ahead of schedule now. The state at this point has 2 more witnesses that'll be ready to be called tomorrow morning. There's some other legal issues that have to be discussed again, but I think the game plan is as follows. We'll let you go today at this time so we can take up those other issues the balance of the afternoon. We'll start tomorrow at 8:30. It's anticipated the state will be done with its case in chief at that time, and then sometime tomorrow the defense will begin its case. So anything else for the record at this time, Attorney Lassay or Attorney Schuchert?
Not at this time.
No,
All right,
thank
then,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, we'll excuse you for the day. Thank you for your attention. Don't discuss the case with anyone, and again, avoid reading anything about the case. Thank you very much.
All rise.